Okay, so now we'll start using those pricing methods that we've talked about. I'll do one video for price point design and let you have a little bit of practice on that, and then I'll do another video for design concept. I'll give you a chance to get comfortable with that one as well. And we'll just do some exercises with how to make these numbers work together. I think one of the most important things to remember when you're pricing your floral arrangements, in addition to the labor cost that gets added in that really does save a business as far as making money, is that you have to charge for every little item. You don't have to calculate exactly what those items cost, but you usually have some standard fees that you add in, say for a block of foam or a piece of wire or a handful of greens. It makes it easier when you're pricing. It makes it pretty fair, and it helps you as the designer or the shop owner not to get too bogged down as you're pricing things, just to have some of those flat fees. So you'll see that as we look at these different pricing strategies. So you really do have to remember to charge for everything, or at least that flat fee. Okay, so let's look at the first item, the first way to price, and that's that price point design. So this is for a customer who has a specific price in mind that they want to spend. They've set a budget for themselves. Now, this also taps into that customer service piece that we were talking to, because it might be that as you're talking to your customer on the phone or in person, you help them establish what that amount they want to spend is going to be, and then you work from that number. A lot of times people don't know how much they need to spend, whether it's too much or too little, because they really don't understand a lot about flowers and how much they cost. So people can either be surprised by how little you get for $30, or they can be excited about how much they get for $30. It depends on what their experience is. And truthfully, you guys have lots more experience than most people do working with flowers, identifying flowers, and now pricing flowers, and understand what they mean and what they cost. I think you've seen some of that a little bit already as you've looked at the sheets and the pricing that came in from Springfield, or when we looked at their website together, that you could see that the wholesale cost is less than the 3 times markup that the retailer would use. So, all right, let's get started on price point. So I thought about doing this up on the smartboard, but I think it's probably going to be easier if you just have your sheets handy. If you don't, you can stop the video and go and get them. So I think it's going to be best if we just have the sheets handy and we kind of follow along together. I know you can't really ask me questions, but you can always shoot me an email if you come up with something. Sometimes this does get a little bit complicated. So we'll read through the description of the different types of pricing strategies. We'll be using our sheets with specific prices for the different kinds of flowers as well. And we'll step in and out of this sheet because sometimes it's easier for me to just describe it. All right, so price point. So you have a customer who has decided that they want to spend, on this sheet it says $30 for a flower arrangement. So you can see in the first column that says description is all of the different things that get priced in an arrangement. Then the next column shows quantity, and the next column shows your retail unit price. So the retail unit price is that column H. Remember column H that we highlighted? It's 1 stem at 3 times markup. So your retail unit price is 1 stem. So you can see where it says gladioli in the description column. If you go down, it's like the 6th or 7th item. You go over and the quantity is number 2. So there's 2 of those gladioli in the arrangement. The retail price is $2.50. So that's that column H. And then the next column is the total that those would be together. Okay, so these are the columns that you have so far. The last column is the subtraction column, because remember, when you do price point, you start with a number and you subtract from it. You've got the price, you subtract to it. Okay, what's the very first thing we're going to subtract from that $30? We're going to subtract labor. So we're going to take 20% right off the top. So you can see when you take 30 and you subtract the 6, now you get 24. So that means that there are only actually going to be $24 worth of fresh flowers and supplies in the arrangement, because you always calculate labor on the highest dollar figure. In price point, it comes at the beginning. Okay. So the next thing you're going to subtract is the base or container. Now, the base or container that's being described in this is just a standard single design bowl. You can see it says quantity is 1. So that $150 is a standard retail price for a design bowl. My experience is they'll actually probably charge a little bit more, but I think for our practices, that's really fair. Back at Christmas time, I needed to go to Halliday's and buy a few single design bowls to finish up centerpieces, and they actually charged me $2.50 a piece for them, even though they knew that I was a school. I was kind of surprised. But that's what that container is. Now, if you were using a different container that costs more, you'd take that right off the top. Labor first, then the container. So if you go all the way over to the subtraction column, you can see now we're down at $22.50. The next line is the foam. A third of a box of foam, 50-cent charge. We're down to $22. Next, it says mechanics, $3.50. So mechanics is one of those flat rate charge things where it covers a little bit of everything, right? And you don't add it all up for each order, but you just always factor in a mechanics charge. So mechanics would be, oh, maybe I use a little tape, maybe there's some floral wire, maybe I used a card pick, maybe there's some ribbon, maybe I had to use some glue, maybe those kinds of things. So you just, as a standard flat rate, you charge $3.50 for your mechanics. So you're always going to subtract that as well. Oh no, I'm sorry, the mechanics is 50 cents. Oops, sorry, I got ahead of myself. The $3.50 is another flat rate, which is that handful of greens. So you could have a handful of leather leaf, a handful of salal, a handful of lily grass. Unless it's something exotic, you would just use this $3.50 charge. You might, if you were using a eucalyptus, you might bump it up a little bit because they tend to be more expensive. A bunch of leather leaf is $4, where a bunch of seeded eucalyptus is $10 or $11. So you might bump that up based on your own experience. That greens fee might not be enough, but $3.50 is a good standard screen fee. So if you go all over to the final subtraction column, now you can see that you're down to $18, and we haven't put a single flower other than those greens into our arrangement yet. So look at how much, $12 comes right off the top of that $30 arrangement, almost half. You've got labor, you've got container, you've got foam, you've got mechanics, you've got green. Now you've got $18 to spend on flowers. So now you can see how this designer used up the flowers. It's a very interesting arrangement. They're using gladiola, lily, carnations, daisies, mini carn, some curly willow, some statice, and some waxflower. And they're subtracting as they go until they get down to 0. So I want you to practice making a couple of arrangements using anything you want to have it come down to 0. Why don't you I'll put a couple descriptions online for you. I'll write them out so that it makes more sense. So I'm going to give you 2 practices for price point so you can try them out. If you have any questions along the way, just ask. So remember, you're going to start with the highest number, your dollar figure. You're going to take all the other things off first: labor, container, mechanics, foam, any of those things, and then you're going to figure out how many flowers. If you want to use sunflowers, say you want to use 5 sunflowers, you go to column H, you multiply 5 times $3.90, and maybe you've already used up all your money. So it'll be kind of fun. You can plan out your arrangements, how you're going to spend the customer's money, and that should work well. Okay, have fun.